Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 368 of the All Dolphins podcast for this Tuesday, September 25th, 2024. It's the return of Behind Enemy Lines, the Tennessee Titans edition, because, yes, the Tennessee Titans are coming back to Hard Rock Stadium for another Monday night game. Why on earth the NFL put that on Monday night? I don't know. That's another story, and maybe one of the questions we can discuss with my guest today, Predators reporter for the Nashville Post, as well as a Predators reporter, also John Glennon. John Glennon, how are you, sir?
I'm well, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I should mention that John and I were former NHL.com correspondent colleagues back in the day. John still covers the Nashville Predators. I no longer cover the Florida Panthers. And, of course, the year I leave covering them is the year they win the Stanley Cup.
I hope they thanked you, right, for departing and allowing them to win the Stanley Cup.
You think at the very least I would have gotten my own private day with the cup with Stanley,
right.
But no gratitude whatsoever.
Disappointing.
Anyway, what are you going to do? So let's talk some Tennessee Titans, Miami Dolphins. The Tennessee Titans are 0-3, one of three winless teams in the NFL. The other two are the Jacksonville Jaguars, who the Dolphins saw in week one. The other one is the Cincinnati Bengals, who nobody would see it coming. And with the Titans, John, is it a major shock that they're 0-3?
I would say it's a shock. Certainly, I would say starting with the fact that they probably could have and should have won both of their first two games against the Bears and the Jets. Both those games, they had the lead, especially against the Bears. It's in the opener. That game seemed to be almost salted away until they made a few just catastrophic mistakes, a silly pick six return for a touchdown, a punt block for a touchdown. All of a sudden, the Bears are back in the game and they go on to win. Jets, again, they were up on the Jets and mistakes were the difference again. Now, against Green Bay on Sunday, I think they were thumped for the most part. They had their share of mistakes again, but Green Bay was certainly the better team. A little bit shocking there that Malik Willis, who, of course, the Titans had traded to Green Bay, was the guy who was running roughshod over them. But, I think there were a lot of high hopes for this team coming in. This team spent over $300 million on free agents, brought in a new head coach, a pass-friendly head coach, and good wide receivers, better offensive linemen. There were high hopes, at least in Nashville, for this team to be better. So, there is certainly some shock right now.
Okay, and I know I don't need to tell you this, but if you look at most of the national media power rankings, those things, Titans are pretty unanimous as a number 32 team. So this is ugly. And to me, it seemed it's all about Will Levis. And we saw good Will Levis in the Monday night game in December last year. And I was like, I was getting flashes of Josh Allen in terms of the pure raw ability. Like, he's going to make mistakes. He's sloppy, but there's a skill set there that's pretty unique. And then this year, it's like one bad decision after another. The one against the Jets where he's about to get sacked in field goal range, and then he tries to just throw the ball to his running back, and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, as I say, when they brought in Brian Callahan, a guy who'd worked with Joe Burrow pretty closely for the last 5 years, Brian Callahan becomes head coach. A lot of people were saying, okay, now he's got an offensive-minded head coach, a guy who really knows quarterbacks, as opposed to Mike Vrabel in the past. He should make steps forward. Now he's got the wide receivers. He's got Calvin Ridley. He's got DeAndre Hopkins. He's got Tyler Boyd. He should be better there. They draft a left tackle, number 7. They add a big-time free agent at center, Lloyd Cushenberry. So they make the offensive line better as well. And everybody was waiting for Will Levis to take the next step. Well, the next step has gone backwards, unfortunately. And he leads the league in 8 turnovers right now, 2 pick sixes already. And, it hasn't helped that he's had, terrible protection as well. He's been sacked 15 times in 3 games, including 8 on Sunday against Green Bay. But, even when the pressure hasn't been there, Will Levis has made too many poor decisions. He's talked, in fact, he used the phrase rewiring my brain, not to make these kind of decisions. But the rewiring is yet to take full hold as we get ready for week 4 here in Miami.
I mean, there's no chance. He's not like on a leash or anything. At some point, they might just yank him and get him out of the lineup, is he?
You wouldn't think yet, the reason being, of course, I mean, he was number two, second round draft pick just a couple of years ago by Rand Carthen, who obviously is still the general manager now. So you would think it would take a little bit longer than 3 games, and maybe they're giving him the benefit of the doubt too, that this is a new system, and maybe there's some adjustments to be made to Brian Callahan's system as opposed to what he was dealing with before. But boy, I tell you, I mean, those turnovers are clearly the biggest and most significant reason that the Titans are 0-3 right now. And as I said, 8 turnovers leads the league, the 5 picks, the 3 fumbles lost, and you just can't keep doing that. So it does get a little interesting because after this game in Miami, the Titans have an early bye. So I mean, if Will Levis goes out and has another game like he has been in these first 3, do you start to think maybe at that point, okay, with a bye week coming up, maybe you look at Mason Rudolph a little bit? I mean, again, it seems far-fetched because, there are thoughts that this guy could be a franchise quarterback, and that seems awfully quick to pull a plug, and you never know what that does to a quarterback's confidence. But at the same point, if you're Brian Callahan and you're a new head coach, you got to start getting some wins, right? It's not out of the question, I wouldn't think, if that performance continues on Monday night.
Dare I ask whether there are any fans in Nashville who might be missing Ryan Tannehill right now?
Oh, I'm sure. Ryan Tannehill was not an especially popular player. His last year, the numbers had gone down. There were some key interceptions, and certainly in some playoff games, Ryan Tannehill was not as good as he'd been in the regular season. But I would think, there are plenty of Titans fans who would welcome him back with open arms right now, and maybe even shockingly, they might be ready to bring back Malik Willis with open arms, and certainly he was no favorite here either. But after the way he looked on last Sunday against the Titans, maybe Tennessee fans are having second thoughts about that move.
Yeah, and Ryan Tannehill's name was brought up at some point during the offseason here for Miami to serve as the backup because there were a lot of people who weren't crazy about the idea of Skylar Thompson starting a game for the Dolphins, and kind of materialized that way. I took an L on this. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because I couldn't fathom the idea that the Dolphins would not kind of be certain that this guy would keep the offense humming if something happened to Tua, because something has always happened to Tua, except for last year. And it did not go well, and I'm being very polite when I say it did not go well on Sunday. So, But Ryan Tannehill doesn't appear to be in the cards because apparently he wants to be a starter, and good luck with that, Ryan.
Yeah. To me, I completely agree with you. If you're Ryan Tannehill, I thought that, apparently there was at least some conversation with Green Bay after Jordan Love got hurt, and apparently wasn't interested there. And like you say, it seemed to have made sense. Would you rather, if you're the Dolphins, wouldn't you rather have Tannehill than Skylar Thompson, as you say? And he's right there in the backyard. But yeah, I'm hearing the same, the reports that you are, that he wants to be the guy for the rest of the season. And there's only so many Joe Flacco seasons to go around like that. So good, as you say, good luck on that, Ryan.
Yeah, I will tell you one that's surprising me right now is how bad the Titans offensive line is, because Bill Callahan is such a highly regarded, and for good reason, offensive line coach. To me, it was like, I looked at their wide receiver core, and we were having a discussion in Dolphin media room today. Where does it rank among the best in the NFL? You got Seattle, which is very good. Houston is very good. And the Titans is up there too. But if you don't have any time to throw the ball, I mean, it doesn't matter how good they are. And I'm like surprised by that. Is it just a matter of is the personnel that bad, or?
I don't think so. It's interesting. You look at what they have. J.C. Latham is the left tackle. He was the number 7 overall pick. He has been probably the best and most consistent lineman so far, which I guess if you're an optimist, you say that's great for the future. You've got a franchise left tackle. On the downside, he's better than all the experienced guys that are next to him on the line. They've got a number 1 pick at left guard, Peter Skoronski, who's been up and down at most, did not have a good day against the Packers. They brought in Lloyd Cushenberry at center, big-time contract, expect a lot from him. He's been inconsistent. A second-round pick at right guard, Dylan Radins, again, up and down, a lot of pressures. And then probably the real weak link of the group, on at right tackle. Nicholas Petit-Frere, who was a third-round pick a few years ago, only played 3 games last year because of injury and because of a gambling-related suspension. There were hopes that he might kind of bounce back to his rookie season and kind of solidify that right tackle spot. Not the case so far. In that game against the Jets, he gave up 11 pressures in that game, in one game. He leads the league right now in terms of tackles, in terms of pressures allowed. I want to say it's 14 or something like that. And, I think he's given up 3 sacks as well. And he gave up, I'm sure, this clip has gone round and round and round on the internet since the game on Sunday, trying to block Kingsley Enagbare of Green Bay. I don't know if I've ever seen this before. He just whiffed completely as Enagbare went past him inside, winds up on all fours basically for a second. Enagbare buries Will Levis, and it was 2.66 seconds and caused the fumble. Green Bay recovers, and that basically is the end of the game right there. So Petit-Frere was benched after that play. We'll see who starts there at right tackle. But another thing that I've heard from a couple of players too is kind of interesting on the offensive line. You mentioned Bill Callahan, who certainly has a tremendous reputation as an offensive line coach, but he is different, I think, than from all other offensive line coaches in the amount of detail and the amount of kind of different technique he teaches. And I think there's a little bit of catching up or adjusting to do in that regard. Maybe that's part of the problem with the offensive line so far, but boy, they're on pace right now to give up 85 sacks.
That's not good, right?
No, pretty bad. So things have to change in a hurry there.
Yeah, it sounds like a little paralysis by analysis there. And because I'm French Canadian, I know this Petit-Frere means little brother, and he's gotten spanked like a little brother.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you. We'll be here all week.
I will not remind him of that.
I have to tell you, I was completely flabbergasted when the Titans made the head coaching move change after the end of last season. Because to me, Mike Vrabel is like a top 5 head coach in the NFL. I personally did not get it. Please explain it to me.
I agree with you. I was surprised myself. I'm not saying that Mike Vrabel was my favorite guy in the world. Not that matters. He could be a little difficult to deal with at times. But I thought he did an awful lot, even when he didn't have a lot on the roster. And to me, I think the last 2 years when the Titans went, 7-10 and 6-11, to me, the biggest problem was, or two of them, were A, the personnel on the roster, and B, the unbelievable amount of injuries. Titans really for the last 3 years had either finished first or second in terms of man games lost, I think, on the injury front. So I think that was a huge part of the problem. And I really think, when you look at Mike Vrabel's overall body of work with the Titans, I think you needed to take that into account if you're the owner, if you're Amy Adams Strunk, and say, look what he did, the first 4 years or so. Give him that chance, maybe with a healthier team, maybe with better personnel to try to turn things around. So I was surprised, and I think one of the reasons was not necessarily the way he was as a coach, but from innuendo, scuttlebutt, back alley channels, and so forth, and you hear things that he wasn't necessarily the best collaborator, which is not hard to imagine.
Sounds familiar.
Yes, very true. And I think that was very much an emphasis for Amy Adams Strunk, both in terms of getting a general manager and in terms of a coach. She felt she had that in the general manager and Rand Carthen, who she hired the year before. And basically, I think the Athletic reported on this at one point, that Mike Vrabel came to Amy Adams Strunk after the season and said, look, I've been here a good while. I think I've earned the right basically to have the last say on the 53-man roster, things like that. I think it's basically owed to me at this point. And more or less the way it went was Amy Adams Strunk said, well, not only are you not going to have that, but B, you're fired. So I think it was, pretty much a shock to old Mike as well. But I think that was the main problem. And, we seem to be seeing that trend a little bit in the NFL, that kind of that old alpha way of thinking, whether it's a coach or GM, seems to be out of people aren't really as interested in that now as they are more of a collaborative team, GM, scouts, coaches, etc. And that's what I think eventually happened.
Okay. Quick flashback to the game last year in December, which Dolphin fans will look at as the low light of the season. It's the game that essentially cost them home field advantage, cost them the AFC's title, neglecting the fact that they just couldn't beat Baltimore or Buffalo in the last 2 games of the season, but that's conveniently forgotten in some places. It's always because Tennessee is a team the Dolphins should have beaten. And it was completely shocking, 27-13, 5 minutes left, and then the Titans scored. Touchdown, 2-point conversion, touchdown, ball game. Was that the highlight of the season for the Titans? That win?
There weren't a lot of highlights for the Titans last season, and Will Levis. I would think it was probably Will Levis's second biggest highlight. His first, probably you'd have to say, he debuted with a great game. He threw 4 touchdown passes in his very first NFL game against Atlanta, led the Titans to a win. But the Monday night game was something else too. That was when he wound up throwing for 327 yards. As you say, the Titans came back with a couple of late touchdowns that were completely unexpected. And I think we can all remember probably the sideline shots of Will Levis just looking like a kind of a pumped up, excited maniac over there, chest bumping Mike Vrabel, 5 yards back and just a wild man. And that, I think, was when Titans fans really started to believe, hey, we might just have something here. Not only is he got that spirit, that emotion, that fire, but if you can throw for 327 yards and lead a fourth quarter comeback like that, maybe we really have something. Unfortunately, for the Titans, that was Will Levis's last win as a starter. Yeah, he's gone 0-5 as a starter since then, and it wasn't too bad last year, but obviously we talked about his problems this year, and you have to worry about Will Levis's confidence. At this point, certainly, there have been some thoughts that maybe he's starting to hesitate, maybe to feel a little gun shy when he's throwing the ball. So maybe a trip down south again, back into the lovely and warm conditions in Miami, Monday Night Football again. Maybe it all might bring back the good Will Levis. I'm sure Titans fans are certainly hoping so.
Are fans still? I mean, fans have not already checked out on this season, have they?
Well, there's certainly their share of them. I think we all know the statistics aren't wonderful for teams that start 0-3. So, typically, how it goes. You see fans out there already talking about who we're going to draft at quarterback when we get the number 1 pick, and so forth. And there's certainly plenty of fans that are already calling for Mason Rudolph to get a shot in there. Mason Rudolph is certainly not a guy who's done wonders in his career, but he did finish well last year in Pittsburgh. He won 3 games in a row, helped get the Steelers into the playoffs, and fans are just very disappointed and the word we used earlier, shocked by Will Levis's performance. So there's a lot of disappointment because again, there was so much optimism. You spend $300 million, over $300 million in free agency. That's going to generate some things. You bring in Calvin Ridley and L'Jarius Sneed and the center Lloyd Cushenberry, one after another like that, and you're gonna bring people's hopes up. It's not necessarily a great recipe over the years. It hasn't been shown to be a great recipe for turning things around, buying a lot of free agents, but it certainly drummed up a lot of interest.
Yeah, and for some reason I'd forgotten about L'Jarius Sneed. That's a good pickup. So the highlighters, like on defense, would be him, Jeffrey Simmons, who I think is a complete stud. Yep. Harold Landry is a very good pass rusher. Am I missing somebody who Dolphin fans and the Dolphin offense should make sure that they keep an eye on?
Interesting to watch the guy who'll line up next to Jeffrey Simmons, the rookie. He was a 2nd-round pick out of Texas. Tavondre Sweat is a massive man, and has played pretty well. Hasn't racked up a lot of tackles, but just his presence there. He's so huge. He's so hard to move. He's helped free up Jeffrey Simmons on the interior as well. And then I think behind the front four there, front three. The two inside linebackers have done a pretty good job so far. One of them was another free agent pickup, Kenneth Murray from the Chargers, who's done pretty well. And then the Titans traded for Ernest Jones from the Rams just a few weeks ago, and he's come in and had a great start for the Titans. The Titans will be without. We spoke of cornerbacks earlier. They'll be without Cheeto Awuzie, who injured himself in the game on Sunday. So he's out. He's likely to go on injured reserve. So that could play into the Dolphins' hands.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this matchup, and I think the key for the Dolphins would be take some turnovers, because I think the Dolphin offense, especially the way it looked against the Seahawks, might have some. They're not going to move the ball up and down the field against the Titans, I wouldn't think. So from your end, do you see how do you see this as maybe as one of the biggest keys of this game?
Yeah, I think so. Will Levis at some point is going to have to stop the bleeding on those turnovers. So, maybe the Titans go a little bit more run heavy this week. I haven't seen really necessarily how well the Dolphins are playing against the run, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans at least try. They only ran, I think, 11 times against the Packers. That they were behind for a lot of that game and started throwing. So I would think they would like to try to run the ball a little bit more, cut back on those turnover opportunities for Will Levis. I think defensively it's going to be interesting. We talked about L'Jarius Sneed, and certainly he and Tyreek Hill had some interesting moments in the last playoff game. And if I remember right, I think L'Jarius Sneed has had some pretty good success against Tyreek Hill in the last few matchups. So that'll be interesting to watch as well. But it seems to be, if I'm a Titans fan, I'm cautiously optimistic maybe, because it doesn't appear, and again, you would know better than I, obviously, but it doesn't appear the Dolphins are a great pass rush team, the kind that would give the Titans a lot of problems. I think the Dolphins have 6 sacks, I believe, so far. So that may be in the Titans' favor there. That Will Levis won't see the kind of pressure, perhaps, that he has in the first 3 games.
Yeah, but it's where the Dolphins had 3 against Jacksonville in the opener. They had 3 against Seattle on Sunday. They didn't come close to Josh Allen, who didn't throw the ball very much at all because of the way the game played out, and also because not getting touched by anybody this year with the way the Buffalo offensive line is playing. So I would say the Dolphin pass rush is maybe a work in progress. I wouldn't call it a great pass rush, but I think that could be an area where the defense needs to step up, because the Dolphins need for people to step up right now, because their offense is dysfunctional, and that was the case even before Tua got hurt with the concussion, because they didn't look great in the first game against Jacksonville. They just had 2 big plays, and that was it, and scored 20 points. And then against Buffalo on that Thursday night game, it was bad before Tua went out in the third quarter. So this would be the area where they can make something happen with the pass rush, with the takeaways. I'm hesitant to ask for a prediction because we're 5-6 days before the game. Do you have a gut feeling? Well, let me ask it this way. From a Tennessee perspective, your level of confidence that the Titans can pull it off and do 2 wins in a row on a Monday night in Miami would be what?
It's much better with Tua out of the lineup. I will say that. I did my podcast last night, and we always do a prediction at the end. So I guess I've already put it out there once. So I'll go with I feel cautiously okay about the Titans in very, very large part because of the Tua situation. I think it's going to be a real shootout. No. I think it's going to be about 17-9 is I think what I predicted for the Titans victory. Yeah, again, their defense had looked pretty good up until Sunday when they were run right over. But again, I don't necessarily think that's the Dolphins' forte is a strong running game. So maybe that's okay. In that situation. And again, L'Jarius Sneed seems to have some pretty good success with Tyreek Hill, etc. So, if Will Levis, maybe if we set the over under, for say 2.5 for Will Levis and he goes under, this week, then maybe the Titans have a chance. If he goes over, if it's 3 or more, it's probably a Dolphins dub.
Interesting. And if that happens, because there's a little nugget here. Mike McDaniel spoke to the media on Tuesday, and one of the questions was whether he would consider relinquishing play calling duties. And he kind of basically, his answer was like he understands the question because the offense is not performing, and if he felt that was in the best interest of the team, he would consider it. I personally think they're going to have to pry it from his hands, but he may have to consider it. And if the Titans indeed win 17-9, the calls for that to happen are going to grow even louder because there's a certain segment of the Dolphin fan base who want that to happen right now. They're just looking for answers. Any answer whatsoever.
Yeah, that's funny. You mentioned that because Brian Callahan got the same question at his press conference because, this is really a first in two ways for Brian Callahan. Not only as a first-time head coach, but a first-time play caller as well. Even though he was the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, he was not the play caller there. So, he was asked, if this is maybe a little too much, if this is requiring a little bit more thinking, a little too much on his plate than what he thought. And similar answer, I think, to Mike McDaniels. It doesn't sound like he's on the verge of passing up those responsibilities anytime soon. No,
that's a massive admission right there. If you're like, it's become too much for me, I need to let somebody else have it.
Right.
It takes a lot for a guy to give that up. So.
Yeah. One thing I should mention, which is this is a little bit off topic, but one statistical note of interest here. The Titans have not recorded a single takeaway yet this season, which is obviously the differential between their giveaways. Levis has given away 8, and they've had 2 punt blocks as well, which don't count in the turnovers. So that's really 10 giveaways, if you will. And they've yet no interceptions, no fumbles recovered. So when Brian Callahan was asked the other day, what's the number one thing that you have to concentrate on to get this team a win? He said, without a doubt, it's to change that turnover ratio. Stop Will Levis from creating turnovers, and on the other side of the ball, got to find a way to get some takeaways.
No, and correct me if I'm wrong. Stonehouse his season was ended last year because he got destroyed on the punt block. You would think the Titans would hyper focus on their special teams to make sure that doesn't happen again.
You would think, because the poor Ryan Stonehouse, like you said, it wasn't just a punt block last year against Indianapolis. He tore all kinds of ligaments. He had to have surgery. Season was done. He wasn't able to punt really. Through really all the preseason. He basically, his first game back was the regular season. And the poor guy, must be suffering some punter PSD, I'm sure, because in each of those first 2 games, punt blocked, and the first one went for a touchdown. Now, fortunately, he hasn't been hurt in either of those contests, but the new special teams coach, Colt Anderson, who was an assistant special teams coach at Cincinnati, where Brian Callahan was before, he's already got people asking him about his job security. And really, rightfully so. How many times a year is generally a punt blocked? And to see one after another in the first 2 weeks, just, really unthinkable.
Dolphins don't have that issue. However, on special teams, what they have is a knack for leaving early before that kickoff is fielded or lands, because in 3 games they have 5, they're calling it illegal formation penalties on those, 5 in 3 games. That's pretty impressive stuff.
Wow. That's difficult to do.
They've mastered it. And there have been a lot of fans and media members who have not necessarily been happy about the work of the Dolphins' own special teams coordinator, Danny Crossman, who's been here since 2019. And the Dolphins special teams annually rank, with one exception of 1 year when they were 7th, they're usually like 25th or lower in the Rick Gosselin special teams rankings at the end of the year. And yet he comes back and back. Well, I don't know. We shall see. I think that's going to wrap it up. I want to thank John Glennon for your appearance here on the Behind Enemy Lines. John, very much appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Alan.
Absolutely. Find his work at the Nashville Post. Also on Twitter. I'm going to have to put on my glasses so I can see. On Twitter at Glennon Sports. Do you have a website for folks to find your good work?
It's probably NashvillePost.com.
Okay.
I should probably know that, but as far as I know, that's what it is.
Just Google John Glennon and Titans, and that'll take care of it.
There you go.
There you go. Everyone, please like, subscribe, and then we'll see you guys on the Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.